I do remember you saying that. So how is Christy?
Christy's crazy.
Is that fun?
No. She's actually psychotic. She's insanely jealous. She's irrational, and I'm frightened of her.
Still, it's nice you have a girlfriend.
The year was 1995. I was 10 years old. I was looking forward to a summer of fun after school let out, considering I just got 4 straight market pairs of Super Honor Roll, and it was time for my parents to pay up. Life had other plans, however. My mother and father's relationship had fizzled out, so they tried to give this co-parenting thing a shot. But at 10 years old, I got left with a pretty big life decision already. You want to go with your daddy, or you want to go with your mother? I thought about it all of 2 minutes and did what any kid would do. I'm going with mommy. So we left our nice apartment and we had to move on the other side of the tracks because that's all she could afford at the time. I heard stories about the neighborhood we was moving to. A couple of kids I went to school with was from there. It was a tough neighborhood, and I didn't know anybody. I made it a mission to make a friend real quick. So here comes this energetic, charismatic, smile that could light up a whole room, skinny Puerto Rican kid named Juan. Everybody called him Wonky. Wonky showed me around the neighborhood. Showed me which kids was cool, what they did for fun, playing basketball in the garbage cans outside, and more importantly than anything, he showed me where the candy store was. We hit that candy store up a lot that summer. On our way back home from the candy store one time, 2 bags filled with $5 worth of candy, we heard a man yelling at the top of his lungs. Almost like he was arguing with somebody. Couldn't tell where it was coming from. But as we got closer to our apartment complex, realized it was coming from the roof of the place that we lived at. And you could see a man up there throwing punches in the air, arguing, ripping at his hair. I stopped to myself and said, man, that guy looked like he needs some help. And before I could utter the words to Wonky, who was walking with me, he said, oh, that's just Bird. He crazy. Stay away from him. All right, say no more. And we went on enjoying our Kit Kats. Fast forward a couple of days, my mother had a hard time finding childcare, had somebody watch me as she went to work. So she had plans to sneak me into work one day so she could watch me from the break room. As I waited for her to come outside, Bird was at our step. He had a big smile on his face. He said, what's up, young fella? Held his hand out for a handshake. Seemed nice enough. And I was just naive enough, I guess, that I extended my hand to shake his hand too. That's before I got rushed by my mother, who pretty much knocked me halfway across the street and said, stay away from him. Don't go near him. She also turned towards Bird and said, don't you ever bring your crazy ass near my son again. All right, got it. It'd be a couple weeks before I see Bird again. We was playing kickball in some middle school parking lot when we heard 2 shots ring out. Some of the kids ran, but the majority of us misfits did what we always did in situations like that. We ran to investigate. As we inched closer to where we thought the shots came from, me being the most curious one, saw that there was a pool of blood out by where people took their garbage out at the place we lived at. As I get closer and turn the corner, I see there's a man on the ground, bleeding from his chest. I got close enough to ID that it was Bird. He was still alive, but he looked like he was in bad shape. I started to run home, remembering that my mother wasn't home. So I knocked on the neighbor's door. They called the police, called 911, got the ambulance out there. I never knew what happened to Bird, but I do know they arrested the person that shot him. He could be heard saying from people who was there when he got arrested, that, quote, that motherfucker got too close. Wow. Always found that story ironic, because I believe the theme is distance. Everybody said stay away from Bird. Don't go near him. Something's wrong with him. Ironically, we inch closer to him in the moment he needed our help the most, suffering from an injury that could have potentially been fatal. And maybe it was, I don't know. But the theme is distance. It's always stay away. There's something wrong with them. And I'm not a doctor. I don't know whether or not Bird was diagnosed with a mental illness or a disorder or what. But I do know he definitely was a person that needed help. And none of us and none of the adults that was around there was willing to help him out. Maybe we could have intervened at some point earlier. Maybe we could have intervened earlier and that situation would have never occurred. But I guess we'll never know. As I get older, that story upsets me, but I'm less surprised about it now. Because we see it all over the place. We've all known situations where somebody who dealt with a mental illness or mental health issues being denied employment, being denied housing. We all know that the prison system and the jail system does whatever they can to place people with mental illnesses in solitary confinement, worsening their condition. And to a lesser, unrelated degree, if you ever been in an inner city public school, we all know where they kept the quote unquote special needs kids in the basements at a distance. The prejudice and discrimination of people with mental illness shouldn't be all that surprising, especially given how they depict it on a TV screen or the movie screen. A study of primetime programming showed half of all mentally ill characters are shown hurting others. 1 out of 4 kill someone. They're also shown as non-contributors to society. And a survey conducted in 2013 found 46% of Americans believe that persons with a serious mental illness are far more dangerous than people of general population. On the contrary, doctors and mental health advocates say mentally ill people are more likely to be victims of the crime. I mean, we've all seen it. Mental health patient starts hearing voices, starts seeing visual hallucinations, gets triggered by something, goes on a homicidal rampage, killing everybody. And all we say is, oh, he's spazzing out. Oh, he's going schizo. He must suffer from schizophrenia. The most common symptoms of schizophrenia is decreased motivation, poverty of speech, and the flat effect. Not homicidal maniac. Stigmas do real harm. When we place shame on people, they're more reluctant to seek out treatment. They're more in fear of social rejection, avoidance, and isolation. It contributes to a more worse psychological well-being, poor understanding amongst friends and family. Mentally ill people are harassed and bullied. They live a poor quality of life, and they have increased social economic burden. And I believe stigmas are a big contributor to that, and an even bigger contributor to the fact that people who suffer mental illness symptoms are more reluctant to disclose that to the world and live their true self. I think we had a great time in our culture that we could start changing the conversation and changing the narratives. There's a lot of bad information out there. There's a lot of myths that need to be debunked. And there's a lot of conversations that we need to start having with people who not only deal with mental illness on their own, but also people who have done the advocacy work, who go around educating people on mental illness. Those brave enough to share their stories of the valleys that they've been through and how they're trying to come out victorious and bring people up with them. So I reached out to Natasha Pierre, who is the Dean of Mental Health at the Institute for Leadership and Lifelong Learning in St. Petersburg, Florida, to talk to us a little bit about her journey, her story, what we can do to be better advocates for mental health in general and people who suffer from mental illnesses, and some of the things that she's got going on in the future to continue to fight. So I'll welcome on now Miss Natasha Pierre. The first thing I wanted to do before I got into the questions was to hand you your flowers first. I'm a firm believer that you give people their flowers while they can still smell them. And I would say, as we all try to destigmatize and also be advocates and educators in regards to mental health and mental illness, I mean, you like represent the perfect picture of like being a champion for it, being that you've been through the valleys, and the fact that on your road to victory and still searching out victory, that you still went this hard and being a champion for advocacy to kind of go back into the mud and kind of bring people up out of it, the place that you were. So I got to give you your flowers for that before we even start.
I appreciate that very much. If you could see me, my cheeks hurt because I'm smiling so wide. Thank you. Thank you for that, especially, today. Sometimes I don't pause and just think how much I've been through, how far I've come, and how many people I help. And you just slowed me down enough to think about it. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
No problem. So I was curious about your upbringing in regards to what you knew about mental health and mental illness. How was it talked about within the family? Were there any kind of prejudices or thoughts about people who suffer from mental health issues or mental illness?
Great question. I honestly don't really recall any conversation about mental illness in my family growing up. It's not something that was a common topic in, where I'm from, the Virgin Islands and Caribbean, and especially across the African diaspora. Mental illness and mental health are a fairly new topic of conversation. So growing up, it's not something that we spoke about. We know people that, we would call off or say that they were crazy. And we just understood that there was some cognitive impairment that prevented them from really engaging with society or their family. But that was the extent of the conversation.
I read an interesting statistic a couple of days ago about the number of people who suffer from mental illness in America who never received treatment at all. And the number was it's kind of sad if you think about how high that number was, something like 26 million people or something like that.
No, it's higher.
Way higher than that. So
yeah. 1 in 5 right now. 1 in 5 people live with a mental illness, and that means something that was diagnosed by a clinician. So that's 46 million people.
Do you think
in this nation?
Do you think a lot of that number is contributed to people in fear of prejudice and fear of being marginalized?
Well, actually, I think the number is higher. So the 46 million represents people with a diagnosis. There are many people who are walking around undiagnosed because of the stigma and the accompanying mental health discrimination that they feel they will deal with. So they are self-medicating through, alcohol and other drugs. We know that the prison system is the largest mental health hospital that there is. So if we were all honest today, and we all took a poll, we all checked the box and say, yes, experiencing these symptoms. Do you experience these things? I know the number is going to be higher. And if the number is higher, then why aren't we talking about it? Why is it something only, shared in secrets and only in certain places? So that's why I do what I do.
Right. And we appreciate you doing what you do. When you were diagnosed, how was the reception as far as your family, your friends is concerned? Did you feel stigmatized?
Well, when I got diagnosed initially, I was still in denial, so it took a very long time before I shared with anyone publicly at the time, family and close friends, like very, very close, knew about it because I had to deal with the shame and the stigma. This isn't something that is easy to handle. When I got the diagnosis, on one hand, I was relieved, like, oh, yes, finally, there's actually a name for what I'm experiencing. It's not
Right.
in my head, it is real.
Right.
But then, right after whatever short lived high that was, came well, then there's something wrong with me. I'm
Right.
defective. I got a problem. My brain is sick. My mind is sick. I mean, it hurt. And there was a grieving and a mourning process that began and went on for a very long time until I realized that remaining in the shadows and hiding and being ashamed was hurting me more than any stereotype or stigma
Mm.
that someone would put on me if I just say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I've dealt with. This is what I deal with it. Take it or leave it. And that's where I
Right.
really got the freedom to be this version of Natasha.
Mm. Powerful. So this version of Natasha, you have a lot of energy. And energy is one thing, but when you bring energy and what it seems like what you bring, which is love, it's like the perfect combination to be an advocate, to be the person that is in front of all of us on the stage talking to us about this thing. You bring this level of comfort whenever I hear you speak. Where do you think that comes from? Where do you draw from, and what values are you trying to impress upon people when you do speak?
I am an advocate because I had to be. Before I became an advocate for other people, I had to advocate for myself. I had to advocate for my own life. It is a sobering reality to know that you have just enough of your mind left to realize that you're losing your mind. And it was from that place of desperation and feeling hopeless that I had to fight for my life. I made a decision, it was about 5 years ago, where I said, I need my mind. And so it was from that day, that prayer, that I learned everything that I could about not only my diagnosis, but mental health, mental illness, how those diagnoses impacted and affected me specifically, and that I was determined to live. You know, People think that those who have died by suicide wanted to die. No, they wanted to live. They just didn't know how with all of the symptoms that they had. They thought that, ending their life was going to be an out. It would be relief from the pain, the emotional and mental pain that they're experiencing, and the emotional and mental pain that they were putting on their families. People want to live. They just don't know how. Now, my goal is to show others how to do the same. And where does it come from? The passion comes from me wanting to live and me wanting other people to live. I never want anyone to feel as hopeless as I have felt in my life. I never want anyone to feel as alone, as weird, as crazy, as strange as I have felt in my life. I know that it's helping.
When you talk to people, how do you, I hate to use the word protect, but maybe it fits. How do you protect yourself? How do you stave off being emotionally triggered by somebody else's story? If you're talking to a combat veteran or something like that, how do you keep your emotions in line so you don't, go flying out of your emotions?
Yes. So, how I protect my energy in the beginning, it was hard because I wanted to help everyone and be that frontline person. I had the S on my chest, trying to be a superhero. And now I recognize when I need rest. I'm honest with myself about what I need, when I need to take a break, who I can help, who I need to defer to someone else. Or I tell myself to I can observe without absorbing. And absorbing means I'm taking on and feeling everything that that other person is experiencing. I am an empath, so I deeply feel people. Surprisingly, the one area where it doesn't affect me is with veterans. And I'm not a veteran. I don't have anyone in my immediate family that's veterans, but I Well, the first thing is I did an intensive outpatient treatment program several years ago in a mental health, facility. I did it for 3.5 months. And during one of my group's therapy sessions during that time, I was in sessions with active duty military that were experiencing mental health challenges. And I remember the first day I was the only civilian and they didn't really want to share. And I understood because, how do you share what you've been through? And they, asked me like, are you not going to be weird about this? Are you going to be okay? And I was like, absolutely. I don't know why it is. I think I'm grateful that they connect with me. I'm grateful that they trust me enough to share their story, their pain, and I'm okay, but because my mental health matters too.
Yeah. So you've been very vocal about one of the primary reasons of why you do what you do is about saving lives. But I wonder also on the flip side of that, does helping people also contribute to your own self therapy, your own self healing?
Yes, yes, it does. 100%. A lot of my friends know that when I'm having a down day or a depressed day, to give me an assignment. Either give me something to do, give me something to write, and it pulls me out of that headspace. It really, really does. Even from November 6th, 2019, up until last Sunday, I had lost 6 people. Two more people that I know died, in the last 48 hours. And so I've had a lot of loss over the
I'm
last
sorry.
2 years. Thank you. And today, the lady that I work with, who she does a lot of the booking for TV news stations and all of that. I told her, I said, you don't know how much this helps me. She brought me a flower and a card. And I said, you don't know how much this helps me. Because when I can step outside of my own experiences, my own hurt, to help others, to ensure that I'm advocating for others, it reminds me of my why. It reminds me why I do what I do. And for many people, at the point that they're thinking and contemplating suicide, it's because they've lost hope. They're not connected to the why should I be here? Why should I keep going? Why should I fight? Why should I try one more medication? Why should I try another therapist? Why should I try to sleep again? They've lost that. So
Yeah.
every time that I'm able to help someone else, it reminds me of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and it pulls me out, and it's beneficial, and makes sure that I'm ready to do interviews with you.
And we appreciate it. You spoke upon the pandemic as terrible as things have been. The pandemic has been absolutely a terrible burden on people's mental health in general, and also people who have been diagnosed or who haven't been diagnosed with mental illness. But you said we could take this time to reevaluate our values. Explain that concept a little bit about how we prioritize and reorient our lives to keep what's important first, so we don't get all, I guess, thrown off by the clutter.
Absolutely. The pandemic has defined for us what and who are essential. So we heard that term of essential workers throughout the pandemic. That barbershops, you're not
Right.
essential, but
Yeah.
grocery stores, you're essential. Well, when the world shut down, we also had to determine for ourselves who and what were essential. There are some people that we spoke to more so than others. There were some events and obligations that we had that we simply stopped or cut out. The last year has shown us who are the people that are essential to our existence, that support us, that feed us, that contribute to our peace and our well-being. And it also showed us all of the activities, all of the hobbies, all of the extracurricular, peripheral, busy things that we were doing that we could do without. So I know many people want to get back to normal, in air quotes. But before we get back to normal, let's acknowledge that although we're not grateful for COVID, we are grateful for the silence and the stillness that was ushered in that allowed us to reset our priorities. Because now we're triaging. Now we're recognizing that, oh, that thing that we thought was a heart attack is really just a sprained ankle. It can fall off the plate. Those events that we were going to, and we're going through rush hour to get there. Yeah, you're actually just a sprained pinky finger this over here now, this is cardiac arrest. And that's what I need to
Yeah.
be doing.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's sort of like just using the example of, a paper cut versus catching a heart attack. It's like now you have to reevaluate how you always looked at that heart attack. And it's sort of like now
Absolutely.
you have to kind of normalize that conversation as far as like, it's a lot of us who are dealing with this heart attack, and it's perfectly normal. And I know it's exacerbated by the pandemic, but I think it's great that people like yourself get out there and normalize not only therapy, but normalize the conversations that we have with one another about mental health and mental illness.
We do get to normalize the conversation now. We do. And, fortunately and unfortunately, COVID is here. Unfortunately, because we've lost over 500,000 people. It's caused people to lose businesses, homes, jobs, cars, etc. And that's the unfortunate part of this pandemic. The fortunate part in a mental health space is that we're now having conversations about mental health, not just mental illness, because COVID did not create any mental illness. All it did was create mental health challenges and reveal to people where they've been neglecting their mental health. You know, people have realized that, man, wow, my daughter is 10. Yes, sir, you've been working nonstop for the last 6 years. Wow, I didn't know that I liked TV shows. Yeah, because you've been trying to make partner, or you've been trying, and we're not saying that there's anything wrong with ambition and with accomplishments, but where are the priorities? Right now, we have families spending more time together, which is a pro, and con, but people are pulling together. On the other side of this pandemic, I don't want us to ever again discount the importance of connection, the importance of relationship, the importance of community. That's something that we lost. And during the pandemic, we got back to it. We realized, wow, I really do want to hang out with my family for Thanksgiving or Easter or whatever holiday. I do enjoy, you know, Friday night movie night at home with my children. So recognize now, lose sight of ensuring that we prioritize relationship, connection, mental health, self-care, self-love.
The Institute for Leadership and Lifelong Learning. Tell my listeners a little bit about that program and how you fit into its mission.
ILLI is the Institute for Leadership and Lifelong Learning. It was the brainchild of the spiritual leader for First Unity Spiritual Campus in St. Petersburg. And the whole goal is to assist people in expanding their consciousness of their personal life, the world around them. There is a path for spiritual leadership, or if you just want to learn and to expand your understanding on different topics, there's that as well. I have a course on there on mental health where I share my experience, my journey, and the things that have helped me thrive. I wholeheartedly believe that personal development, spiritual development go hand in hand with your mental wellness. It is going to be very, very difficult and challenging to be mentally well if you're not also developing personally and professionally and spiritually. Many times, what people call mental illness is really life issues.
Yeah.
It's you need to break up with that dude, honey. You need to end that relationship.
That job is not where it's at.
That's really what it is. Exactly. You hate that job. You hate going in. You hate the sound. You're in the bathroom crying. It's not that your depression is the result of what you're refusing to confront, what you're pretending not to know. It is you not pursuing your sole purpose, the reason why you were created to be and to exist at this space and time. You're not pursuing that. You're supposed to be an accountant and you're trying to be a pastor.
Right.
Or you're supposed to be a pastor, but you're, in the hair salon.
Right.
When you do one of the biggest freedoms for me, and I think one of the biggest contributors to my mental wellness was unapologetically pursuing everything that sets my soul on fire.
Mm.
Everything that I love, that's creating, that's speaking, that's writing, that's teaching, that's being in the
That's
sunshine.
living without
When I
fear.
just,
That's to do all that stuff. Yes.
exactly, yes, it is saying, you know what, you, Senator Roussan, Senator Darrell Roussan, he is a Florida state senator. He said this quote years ago, and I have repeated it over and over. If I scream my story first, you can't hurt me if you whisper it second.
Mm.
If I scream my story first, you can't hurt me if you whisper it second. And
I like
that's what
that.
I did. I screamed my story. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
So anyone who wants to come behind and say, well, you know she's crazy. Well, you're old news, sweetie. You're old news.
That was yesterday's news.
That was yesterday's news. What else you got?
Right. And the freedom of that
What
must
else do
be
you
make you
have?
feel so light, like as you walk around life. Like I don't have to. I'm not burdened
Man,
by this because I wear it. It's a part of me.
I am not hiding. When you can no longer be held captive by the fear of revealed truth, what remains is freedom absolute.
Mm.
That was given to me, divine download in 2005, and I was chasing it ever since. In 2018, 2019, I finally understood. When I was no longer afraid of people finding out that I had a mental illness diagnosis, when I was no longer afraid of that,
Hmm.
oh my gosh, I was walking taller.
Yeah.
My back is straighter, chin up, crown on.
You probably felt like you unlocked your a whole nother subset of potential that you probably didn't have before, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit
Absolutely.
about what you got going on as far as goals for the rest of the year and beyond, and also people who want to get in contact with you. Where can they reach you at?
Absolutely. So by day, I'm the executive director of NAMI Hillsborough, which is the Hillsborough County in Tampa Bay, the Hillsborough County affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We are the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization, and we're
That's
providing
awesome.
mental health education, support groups, advocacy, and public awareness through 600 affiliates across the nation and even in the Virgin Islands. So that's what I do by day. I'm also, of course, a mental health advocate, activist, educator. I speak at events pretty often. I'm an author, actually working on my second book right now, hoping
Mm.
for an April release. And I am
Can't
on
wait for my
social
copy,
media.
but go ahead.
There you go. LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I am there, and my DMs are always open relative to mental
That's
health.
right. Emphasis on relative to mental health, y'all. Don't get crazy out here.
Thank
Don't
you.
get crazy out here.
Thank you. Well, you know what? I protect my mental health like a pit bull.
Mm.
I've got electrified barbed wire fence around my mental health with pit bulls and
You got hired
Rottweilers all
security.
around it.
Oh my God.
The lasers,
Yeah.
everything. And here's
Okay.
why. When you have experienced the mental health challenges that I have had, I'd rather lose you than lose my mind.
Yes.
I'd rather your feelings be hurt than me risk ever feeling suicidal again.
Mm.
So I put people and everything into two buckets. You either are contributing to my peace and my mental health, you're making me laugh, we're making money together, you're helping me to advocate and reach people, or you are contaminating my peace, the peace that I already have. And that's unacceptable. That's a non-negotiable for
Love
me.
that.
Anything and anyone that contaminates my peace has got to go.
I love that. I love that. All right,
Mhm.
Miss Pierre, I really appreciate you
Yeah.
coming on Mind On Matters. It has been a absolute pleasure talking to you. Yeah, I can't wait to maybe talk to you again in the future and watch you grow. And as my podcast grows, we can talk again in the future and laugh about how we talked back early in the pandemic or whatever like that. But I want to thank you for your time out of your busy schedule. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now you may be thinking, mental health, mental illness, what does that have to do with me? What's my impact? Well, The World Health Organization estimates that 1 in 4 people will be affected by mental or neurological disorders at some point in their lives. Currently, 450 million people are experiencing such conditions. As they explain, mental disorders are among the leading causes of ill health and disability worldwide. One of the most common mental health disorders is depression, affecting more than 264 million people globally, and that's just in 2017. A more recent study, which concentrates on the United States only, concludes that the number of adults experiencing depression has tripled during the pandemic. 1 out of 4. The next time you're in a crowded room, just know there's a good chance that somebody's dealing with something, and it may be you. You may not be able to know it. Maybe you're not ready to confront it because you're in fear of the stigmas. You're in fear of being shamed. But the problem is grave. Most people who commit suicide have a diagnosable mental disorder. Most commonly a depressive disorder or a substance abuse disorder. The highest suicide rates in the United States are found in Caucasian men over the age of 85. However, suicide is also one of the leading causes of death in adolescents and adults ages 15 to 24. It is time to get this thing under control. How do we do that? We talked to Ms. Pierre. Also mentioned before the interview that I think it might be helpful to start debunking some of these myths or some of these assumptions that we made about mental health and mental illness and the people who are living with it. So let's just debunk some of the myths. All right. First myth. People with mental health conditions cannot work. It's an old and persistent myth that people with mental health issues can't hold down a job or be useful members of the workforce. This is entirely false. It is true that someone living with a particularly severe mental health condition might be unable to carry out regular work. However, the majority of people with mental health issues can be just as productive as individuals without. A U.S. study published in 2014 investigated employment status according to the mental illness severity. The author found that, as expected, employment rates decrease with increasing mental illness severity. However, 54.5% of individuals with severe conditions were employed, compared to 75.9% of people without mental illness. Clearly, they can do the job. Another myth is eating disorders only affect females. This is a stereotype that eating disorders are only young, white, wealthy females. It can affect anyone. For instance, a study that investigated the demographics of eating disorders over a 10-year period found that they are shifting. The most significant increase in prevalence occurred among males, individuals from lower income homes, and people aged 45 years or older. According to the research, males currently account for 10 to 25% of all cases of anorexia and bulimia, as well as 25% of cases of binge eating disorders. How about another myth? Psychiatric medications are bad. Here's the facts. People tend to believe that psychiatric medicines are harmful, or that they believe that the psych meds are simply happy pills and an easy way out. Again, this is simply not true. Just like any other detrimental medical condition, mental illness is still an illness. For many with mental illness, medication is necessary, just like it would be for a diabetic taking insulin. For some individuals with mental illness, medication is needed for survival. For others, like who have mild to moderate depression, anxiety, ADHD, medication can simply ease the symptoms so they can function normally, and have regular therapy combined with medication that can greatly improve their quality of life. We need to remember that many people experience mental illness. If you have a mental illness, know that you're not alone. 1 out of 4 people in the world have a mental illness at some point in their life. So what should you do if you are afraid of the shame, the stigmas, the discrimination, the prejudice that comes along with disclosing your mental illness? One thing you can do is try to remember that you're not alone. 1 out of 4 people in the world at some point will suffer from a mental illness or mental disorder. 1 out of 4. There are people like you out there. You're not alone. Try your best to find support, whether that's in the form of family, friends, maybe church. Whatever you do, stay connected to others and get support. Organizations like the National Alliance of Mental Illness offer educational and supportive resources for people and their families who are affected by mental illness. Get treatment so that you can experience reduced symptoms and a better quality of life. Also, whether or not you suffer from mental illness or you're an advocate, like I hope you are, speak out. Educate people. Educate people about the realities of mental illness, including how common it is, and actively speak out against stigma. Debunk myths about mental illness, such as the idea that people with schizophrenia are usually violent. If a family member or a friend makes a disparaging remark about someone with a mental illness, educate them and have a no-tolerance policy. I want to thank Miss Natasha Pierre for coming on the show. Outstanding woman. I look forward to the work that she's doing going forward. But yeah, we 4 episodes in now, I think. And to be honest, when I started the show, I had 8 topics that I definitely wanted to touch on. So after the 8, I'm kind of like, where do we go from here? But as I learn more about, mental health in general, I get more ideas, but I'm relying upon y'all, man. I really love the community that we starting to build. It's small, but we powerful, and it's only going to grow as we grow our numbers and as you guys continue to rate, subscribe, share. I'm posting more on the social media, so if you ever see something posted about Mind on Matters on Instagram, hey, I wouldn't be mad if you shared it to your story or shared it to your Facebook. Wouldn't be mad at all. Not one bit. So continue to do that. I love y'all, man. You took the time to listen to this episode. This is a lot of labor, doing this all by myself, but it's for y'all, and it's therapeutic for me, to be quite honest with y'all. So I appreciate y'all hanging out with your boy. If you got any show ideas, please hit me up in my DMs, Mind on Matters on Instagram. Let me know if you got any ideas, any way that we can improve the show going forward, any way that we can get more listeners and subscribers, and we'll just keep taking it from there. I actually have a show idea. If you guys want to DM me about your opinion on it, I'm thinking about making a show bi-weekly, so it'll be every other week. But in the middle, the weeks when we don't have the main show, I was thinking about doing a show with my son where we talk about the previous week's show. Like, I'll sit down and talk to him about the stigmas involving mental illness, or when we did the stress episode. We got a dope fatherhood episode coming on where I think he's gonna be my special guest. We're gonna talk about his upbringing with me being his stepfather, coming in his life early. So let me know what you guys think, man. I want all feedback, positive or negative, doesn't matter. But when you see the episode and you listen to it, make sure you share and spread the word, man. Some of y'all been doing it. I love y'all for that. And I'm out until I see y'all on the next episode. Ubuntu.